Here's my update. After my last video, I went ahead and logged on to soulsisters.net. And for those of you with PCOS, you're probably a member, but it's the biggest PCOS community forum online. It's full of information, lots of great women. So I logged on to see if there were any threads with women who do alternative medicine to control their PCOS. The only medicine that I have ever taken before that was natural was Hypanid, which is an Ayurvedic medicine, holistic, natural. It is the natural equivalent to metformin. It doesn't have all of the nasty side effects. No vomiting, no diarrhea. The pills are pretty gross. The taste was gross, and the smell isn't too great. But you take 2 of them with one meal and 2 of them with another meal. 4 pills a day, and there's no other dosage, unlike metformin, which comes in several doses, apparently. I took it when I was dieting and exercising, and I did pretty well with it. The reason I stopped was when we started seeing our fertility specialist, because he had started me on Clomid, and I figured, if nothing worked out, I would just get back on it again. But while I was on there, I came across a thread that I had never seen before, where you look up your state, and the women in the state write down reviews about the doctors that they've seen. And I read a lot of really great things about a doctor out here. I've seen some pretty crappy things about pretty crappy doctors that I've seen. But I saw some good reviews on a doctor out here named Dr. Alan Burchell. And he's an endocrinologist and internal medicine specialist. And he specializes in metabolic diseases and disorders. And he specifically studies diabetes and PCOS. So I figured it'd be a good thing to see him. The women were saying that he was really great, really understanding. He was kooky, he was funny, very personable. So I called and made an appointment, and they put me in for Friday, April 3rd at 7 a.m. I have never had to go to a doctor's office before 9 a.m. So, and we had to travel to beat traffic that morning. So we left at 6 a.m. and I ended up getting there at 7:30, and they didn't really care that I was late because they were looking forward to seeing me. So we went over my history, he wrote down every single thing that I had to say about my history. Every last piece of it was interesting, and it was a part of everything. So he did a physical, and during the physical, he was writing things down, things that he noticed, things that were kind of throwing him off a bit. And halfway through the physical, he said, "Which doctors diagnosed you with PCOS?" And I said, "Well, my OBGYN unofficially diagnosed me with it and sent me to the first specialist, and the first specialist did a physical, like what he was doing, and did a glucose tolerance test and diagnosed me. And then when I went to see my fertility specialist, he did an intravaginal ultrasound, which is where we saw cysts, and he did just a regular blood test and came up with the diagnosis himself." And Dr. Burchell said, I don't want to be a downer on this, but you do look like you have PCOS, but he said, I kind of think that maybe they made the diagnosis before they even did the test. So he pulled up the test in the computer, because the auctioner system out here, you can pull up any records pretty much from any other auctioner hospital. And he looked, and of course the only blood test that the doctor had done was a glucose test, and that was it. So that's all he went off of. And Dr. Burchell said, there's more testing that has to be done. You can't just do a blood test and say, "Oh, guess what? You have PCOS." So he said, "The reason I'm asking is because you're showing signs of something called Cushing's syndrome, or Cushing's disease." And he said it's basically all the same symptoms as PCOS, but a few additional things. Anemia, which I do have, very fragile and thin skin, which I've always had. You can tell how extremely pale I am. I bruise so easily. I have a fleshy hump on the back of my neck between my shoulders. It's all just flesh, just fat. Sudden weight gain in the face and throat, which I do have also, as well as reddish purple stretch marks from excessive weight gain, and also has to do with the bruising and bleeding. So he went ahead and said that he was also going to test me for Cushing's, just in case. We went ahead and did blood work for everything, for diabetes, hypothyroidism, you name it. You know, he went ahead and got the whole thing done. They took 10 tubes of blood. 10 tubes. And of course, me being anemic, I was like sitting in there going, I'm gonna pass out! So they had to go and get me a orange soda. I hate soda, but it's all they had. So, they went ahead and put me in for the next week to go ahead and take what is called dexamethasone, the suppression test. I went ahead and took the pill at 11 p.m. and that next morning they got me into the lab at 7 a.m. and went ahead and drew my blood. And they told me it would probably take a while for the results to come back, and if they came back inconclusive, we would have to do it again at a higher dosage. So that same day, the nurse had called back, and I was freaking out thinking maybe she had the results for me already. She called back and told me that they had gotten my FSH, my LH, and my insulin levels in. My FSH came back a 4.5. Your FSH is your follicle stimulating hormone. It's what causes your follicles to grow in your ovaries. Your pituitary gland sends the message for the follicles to stimulate, pretty much, to grow eggs. 4.5 isn't excessively high. Actually, if you have a 10, doctors aren't really as willing to do IVF or IUI or anything like that because the chances are so slim. If you have a 12 or higher, they won't do it at all. It's pretty much, it's menopause. But for my age, a 4.5 is still considered high. And the example being that my mother did a second round of IVF when she was 40, trying to see, she had one last embryo and she wanted to see if it could result in one last baby. She had already successfully gotten my brother, my youngest brother, from IVF. When she went in to do this IVF, her FSH level was a 4.5. At the age of 40, it was a 4.5. The IVF did take, but unfortunately she did end up losing the embryo, chemical pregnancy. So basically, she was a 4.5. So for me, 4.5 is a little high. Mine should be about a 2 or less. So it is slightly high, and that does have to do with PCOS. My LH was an 8.1. Your LH is your luteinizing hormone. That's what an ovulation prediction kit catches when it comes out positive, that you have an LH surge right before you ovulate. Mid-cycle, your levels should be about an 8.7, 9.0 something. So for me to have an 8.1, and this was also, the blood test was done on cycle day 34. So for me to have an 8.1 means that I had not even yet ovulated, which also signifies PCOS. So, and I'm on cycle day 44 now. I still haven't had any signs of anything, which is very irritating. I got so used to having 28 to 31 day cycles. And finally, my insulin level was a 22. I have no idea. I haven't found anyone who can tell me what that means. If you can tell me what that means, that would be great. I still have stuff to talk about, and my time's about to run out. So I'm going to go ahead and make a second video. So watch it after this video.